Got the face for TV. What can you say?
Definitely not.
Wow, you're talking about Kent like that?
I don't know how they allow me on there, to be honest.
You're literally on camera.
Yeah, I don't know how. It was a mistake.
Tucker just surprised us very quickly with all that.
No.
Hamilton sipping on tea. I'm having a good time. We've got a lot to talk about. I want to hear from both of these two just kind of about the Super Bowl, right? After a little bit of time away. We have a big tackle conversation to talk about. I am fired up over a lot of the things I'm seeing out there, and we're going to have a discussion. So let's get this thing started.
Thanks for listening to KC Sports Network, proudly presented by Emprise Bank. If you're thinking about starting a business or know someone who is, check out Emprise Bank's SBA loans. It's always good to know your options, and they can be your partner in possible.
Welcome into a live edition of the KC Laboratory presented by Emprise Bank, member FDIC, our tremendous partners in possible here at KC Sports Network. Wednesdays are Matter Days here at KCSN, and I am thrilled that Matter Days are back because it's been a little bit of time since we've had one of these. I'm Matt Swanson. I'm here with Matt Hamilton and Matt Lane. Lane, hi. Matthew Lane.
Yeah, okay. I'll sit in that way longer than you will, buddy. Don't worry about that. We're back. We're doing okay. I'm glad you'll be fired up about the tackle discussion because I also got something to yell about here in a little while. So,
did you listen to a little bit of the show, right? So you know what we said about where you were at on Monday, right?
No, I missed that part.
We equated Great Wolf Lodge to your darkness retreat. So you were just in the pub stand.
It's the
with
opposite of a darkness retreat. If you've ever been to Great Wolf Lodge, it's the exact opposite of that. It is in fact as many noises as you can get in one building is what that place is. I wasn't here on Monday. I had a Great Wolf Lodge trip planned. The hope was it would be so exciting because the Chiefs came off the three-peat. Instead, it was just a chance to, step away from having to talk and think about the game for a minute. But now it's been days. And, as you guys can all attest to listen to, I am not usually the most rainbows and sunshine person as is. And now we actually have something to be upset by. So I got a lot to say here in a little bit before we even get into the tackle stuff. But before we get there, I mean, we got Hamilton back. We haven't had him for a couple of weeks. It is nice to have you back, buddy. And, I'm glad that you are doing a little bit better and you're here with us today.
I appreciate it. I definitely missed you guys. I did get to see Tucker in New Orleans, which was by far the highlight of the trip. BJ too, but obviously Tucker, the star of the show. But yeah, no, I'm happy to be back here with you guys. I definitely missed it.
Are you going to fly Tucker to Philadelphia for the parade for Up and Adams, or is he
I could not do that to him. I'm sorry. I know he's still probably broken up a little bit. But yeah, it's we will have no parade correspondent because nobody can equal what Tucker brings to the table. So we're just going to take a year off from it.
The scavenger hunt you guys put him on last year was incredible. So good.
Poor woman.
It was so good.
You look like you have an AARP card. Top 5 things a woman wants to hear. Yeah.
Good night.
Yeah.
Tucker was down bad on Monday. That was rough. I feel like I moved on okay-ish from all of this, but it's definitely been a lot to process. I know we've all had a few more days kind of removed from it. And Hamilton, we haven't heard anything from you at all about this. I would love to just kind of get your reactions off the top real quick about this game. We'll let Matty Lane cook after that. But Hamilton, what were your thoughts on this game?
Yeah, I mean, obviously it was stunning. I think we were all stunned just with the way it unfolded. But as things were happening, I was thinking there were so many things that we had kind of talked about throughout the year as little issues that were popping up. And some people at times it's you guys are being critical. They're 15-1 with Mahomes, but it was, the interesting part to me was with Mahomes, it was kind of what we saw early in the year before the onslaught of pressure really started. You saw moments where he just looked uncomfortable with what was going on in front of him. And I don't think he was sacked until the fourth drive, or really, there weren't those big crazy pressures on him until a few drives in. But even from the jump, he just didn't look comfortable back there, which is what we saw kind of early in the year when the offense was having some of its issues. Obviously, the offensive line we're really going to get into, and that was a huge part of this all, but also the inability to create any pressure with four was such a huge thing. I was looking at right before the show, Jalen Hurts' numbers. When they rushed four, he was 15 of 17, 185, 2 touchdowns, no picks. That's a 151.2 rating when the Chiefs did not blitz him in this game. And that's something that we had, kind of identified as an issue and talked through multiple times this season. So it's kind of just like all the little things that were points of concern for the Chiefs all year, they all just came crashing down in this one game. And again, I'm not saying I expected it by any means, but it is stuff that it was just one of these things where it's like they kind of managed around those issues all year. And this is the game where it all came back to bite them.
Yeah, it wasn't surprising the way it happened in this particular game. Absolutely. I mean, obviously 100% didn't see this coming out, but the more time that we get from it and the more you kind of look into what happened, how it happened, try to connect all the dots, it's not surprising in a vacuum that any one of the singular things that happened throughout the game happened. It's not a surprise the offensive line couldn't hold up. It's not a surprise that none of the players could get open versus zone. It's not a surprise that Mahomes started to get a little flustered because things weren't open. None of those things by themselves are a surprise. It had just been a long time since you had seen all those things stack up against the Chiefs in a singular game, especially in a way that makes Mahomes go from dragging that forward and making it better to being at the best, just a part of the issue, if not one of the leading causes of the issue. And I don't think he was the cause. I think the more I go back and watch, they really put him in a hard spot. And that's what we're going to yell about here in a little bit. But in a vacuum, like I said, I don't think any singular part of it was overly surprising. So it just sucks that it all happened at once. And maybe this goes to say, maybe we don't poke fun when we say, hey, this team has a historically low, DVOA ranking or historically low point differential. Those aren't end all be all stats, but maybe those things do tell you a little bit that there could be trouble in winning a bunch of one score games because you happen to have the best player who gets a chance to play his best in those moments. Maybe that does, shine some light that there are some broken pieces to the team as a whole. And I think that is what we saw. And tip the hat to the Eagles. They played a phenomenal football game. You could run that game back 800 ways. And even if those things don't happen, I don't know if these Chiefs are beating the Eagles in that game the way they played. I just think the Eagles were ready for it in a way the Chiefs weren't. It obviously we got pretty bad. I don't think it was as bad as the score says. The game was. Let me be very clear. The game was as bad as the score says, if not worse. But when you go back and look, they lost the plot pretty early in the game because of just some silly mistakes. You think back to the first drive, Mahomes puts a ball on the back hip of Kelsey, and whether it's a bad throw or he's trying to protect him from a hit, either way, that catch has got to be made, right? Whatever it is, it's got to be made. Either it's a slightly off target throw or he's a good throw that he's trying to protect from a hit. You got to make that play. They end up having to punt. You go to the next drive, and I think that they got by the Eagles in the second drive. I think it was 3rd and 3. They kind of run their mesh return, and they tried to get, I think that was the one where they tried to get Worthy going on the wheel route against Bond.
Yes. And then they had Hollywood on the whip.
Both sides were. So and so when Bond goes out and covers the swing, it converts to a wheel, but the fade route down the sideline isn't actually part of the progression. You can't just sit there and linger on that. You got to get the other stuff. So you were supposed to throw the swing if it was open. The Eagles take it away. Then you come back. Your two guys that have to win that route are Travis Kelce and Hollywood Brown. They are going up against a linebacker and the Eagles' number 4 cornerback. Guess who didn't get open on that play? Hollywood Brown and Travis Kelce were both blanketed. There's another punt right there. It's like somebody has to win. And then we finally have the 3rd and 3 where they run the little bunch play where Travis Kelce, I think, stays wide. Mahomes kind of expects him to come inside a little bit towards the linebacker because that's kind of the way the play is designed. Kelce says, why would I do that? I'm more open here. So they're just a tad off. And once again, you have a difficult catch that's not made. But I mean, there's 3 plays right there that pick up a first down that potentially extend drives. Well, this is a 0-0 or 7-0 game. And from that point on, nothing went their way. Nothing went their way from that point on, and the Eagles just took full advantage.
And you can even go to, the one-on-one with Worthy and Quinyon Mitchell, where Patrick did have all the time in the world, and for some reason didn't want to let that one rip, ends up checking it down to Juju. That was puzzling. There were some puzzling moments from Patrick, especially early on in this game. It got to the point where as you said, it just he was put in a very, very rough spot. I'm by no means saying, that this is all on Patrick, but there were some moments, especially early in this game, when they did have a chance to get some things going that he just was not sharp. He was not at his best.
So like that third thing, that interception that he throws, the first interception he throws, it's on him. That was, now the play calling, was because they had to half field sprint out on 3rd and 15. But and so you want to blame the protection for that? Like, sure, because they can't literally block anyone. But great play by Cooper DeJean, and a tough decision. That pass isn't completed pass is not completed if DeJean picks it off or doesn't pick it off. Yeah, if DeJean's not there, that's a punt anyway.
He told us today on the show he thought if he didn't get it, he thought Quinyon was going to pick it. Like, there's
a chance. I mean, I don't. Just the way I don't think so, but that's entirely possible, right? It was awful. Like everyone shares a piece of it. I think, they couldn't even get a rhythm at all, and that was part of it. Like that was one thing is there's just a lack of rhythm entirely in that game, and it was you're having to punt all the time, and you're 3 and out, punting poorly.
Yeah,
there's all of that. Could. Oh, go.
Oh, so I'm sorry. And I know, and I'm seeing in the chat, guy Fly Parks, about not even attempting to run the ball. Yeah, I think it was 12 passes to 1 run their first 13 plays. And again, I know against this Eagles front, with the way the offensive line is constructed right now, it was going to be an uphill battle to run the ball, but they were starting in, they're behind the chains on those first few drives consistently. And again, eventually when the defense knows there's no threat of a run, it changes the way they operate. These pass rushers can pin their ears back too. I thought that was interesting. Again, I don't know how well they would have run the ball if they tried to do it, but at least having some balance there, and trying to stay ahead of the sticks, could it have made a difference? Maybe. But that was also just an interesting, because the Chiefs haven't been the best running team all year, but they've stuck with it, and it's worked for them, and it's given them balance to this offense. This was, as lopsided, I feel like, as I've seen this offense in a long time.
I wanted to go back to the interception too. Yes, it was a bad throw by Mahomes. He was a beat late, not even a bad throw. It was just a bad decision because he was late. But I think DeAndre Hopkins kind of messes this up too, because why is he drifting upfield and running as far to the sidelines as he can? Where Hopkins got to, that put 4 wide receivers outside the numbers. He doesn't need to be there. Slow down, throttle down, stay flat and throttle down in the middle of the field. So that way there's a single person not running into 6 defenders inside of the bike. That's not saying why the interception was thrown. I want to be very clear. That was a bad play by Mahomes, but that just whizzed into the lack of the details of the planning and how prepared the Chiefs were. There was zero reason for Hopkins to haul ass across the entire field and just join the scrum of players. He ran into the ball having to be thrown essentially into an interception. Not only did he drift upfield, he just kept running to where defenders were. He's like the opposite of zone coverage stuff. And I understand that Mitchell was chasing, but that's why you stay flat. That way it was just bad details all around. And that kind of carries into, go ahead. You got some else, Kent, before I'm about to rip. So if you got to get back in here, go ahead.
Yeah. I'll just add one thing. That D-line looked better than what we saw in Philadelphia or against the Washington Commanders in that game, in the AFC Championship game. The defensive line for the Eagles took it up yet another level.
Yeah,
and part of that
Great
they
plan.
were unbelievable. Like, just they dialed that thing up even higher than they ever had all season. And so, like, credit to them. And like, you got Nolan Smith blowing up whenever run plays they're trying. I don't really get mad about them trying to run the football because it was worse running the football than it was throwing. They averaged
And we
1
kind of
yard
knew,
1 yard
it's
per
kind of what
carry.
we would have expected going in against that D line. I wasn't expecting them to have a ton of success.
I thought they were gonna. Honestly, as I was watching the game, I was like, they're just trying to get the ball out of Mahomes' hands quick, but they're trying to wear out the Eagles' pass rush by just letting them, like this young group of kids that's never been here before, just be so juiced up for the start of the game, and they were gonna just try to wear them out early by letting them rush the passer and pin their ears back, and then let them sit there for 45 minutes during the halftime show and then go finish it in the second half. Like, that's honestly part of what I thought they were trying to do, just the way they played. They couldn't successfully run the ball anyway. Maddie, I think you're about to go nuclear. So by all means, here we go.
Listen, this is what happens when, like, the post-game show is like, it's like trying to accept and like cope with the loss. You don't really get to think much about the game. And then now, without being on the lab earlier this week, I've had a lot of time just to sit and stew in my own thoughts. And moved on from the game pretty much. Like, the game's what it is. I have grown increasingly annoyed, bordering on angry, that Andy Reid had one of the most absolute terrible game plans I have ever seen for this game of this magnitude versus a defense that had absolutely zero. Okay, sorry, they did have a curveball. They once played one rat in one of the early third downs. Whoa, big curveball, buddy. No, they played 95% zone. They played 4 coverages. That was all Fangio's basic quarters. He didn't even have to get into anything because the Chiefs couldn't move the ball. It was nothing out of the ordinary. Not only out of the ordinary, it was the same stuff they've done to the Chiefs every single time they play. They're going to rotate the weak safety down anytime Travis Kelce's the number 3 wide receiver opposite side, and they're just going to bracket him from the backside. That leaves backside corner one-on-one, quarter on the other side. That's all it is, over and over and over. And the Chiefs had absolutely no answers. Not only did they not have answers, it felt like their game plan was to take deep shots, something they've connected on 0 times all year. And then if that didn't work, we'll just throw the ball over the middle of the field to Travis Kelce, because that's what we do. Well, guess what? You couldn't do a single time in this game outside of the no-look slant to Juju Smith-Schuster on the first play. Throw the ball over the middle of the field. It was one of the worst game plans I've ever seen. And I get it. The first 2 drives, you maybe have to just burn those plays trying this new thing because that's your scripted plays. You want to see how they react. That's fine. You get out of those, down 7-0. Now it's time to go to stuff that works. Traditional quick game, the same thing that the Washington Commanders use, the same thing the Rams use, the same thing the Packers use, or any other team that had success against the Eagles. Every time the corner's off, throw a hitch, throw a little smoke route. That's fine if you only gain 2 yards. That's better than a sack. That gets the ball out of Mahomes' hands. Oh, guess what? They're going to play the same coverage. You know what you can do? Instead of always running a go route, turn one to a post. I now occupy 2 of your deep defenders instead of just 1, and I clear everything else out. The Chiefs had a terrible game plan from Jump Street on how to attack Fangio, and that blew my mind. I still don't understand the concept or what they did going into it, and I have yet to wrap my head around this. I don't know what Andy's thought process was, other than we thought our protection held up good enough against Houston, and it's a similar enough pass rush and coverage unit that this is what we're going to do. Offense wasn't great versus Houston either. They just did enough. What the hell are we thinking here? Sorry.
Yeah, I'm with you. It was funny because, again, there were no surprises. We knew how Fangio was going to play them, and you're right. Like, just take what's there, especially when you're not going to run the ball. Again, that's how you stay ahead of the sticks, and you get those short completions, even if it is 2-3 yards. You take it. And to your point too about the deep shots and that not really being an element of this offense all year. That long touchdown to Worthy was the first completion of 40+ air yards since week 4. It was the first attempt of 50+ air yards since week 9. So this is something that they hadn't done in months, that they were attempting to do in this game. So it was bizarre, to say the least.
Watching that game and slowly seeing like that game just kind of unfold, and as that thing was going on, it felt to me like the Eagles started playing a little bit more condensed. Like they, talking about standing up and throwing a hitch. as the game was going on, there wasn't hitches even available. Like the soft coverage you were getting wasn't even easy completions to the hitches, because it felt like they were starting to condense down a little bit more too, because the pass rush was, like the lid was getting a little tighter. It almost felt like, because that the pass rush was getting home. So like they felt like they could be even a little bit more condensed than they were as the game was going on, because like I was watching some of those plays and like I didn't even feel great about some of the hitch options that they had when they had them called. And maybe it was, I don't want to throw a hitch to Xavier Worthy here, maybe, but it was better than taking a sack. Like, I don't know. Maybe like they didn't want to, like some of the personnel could have been some personnel stuff. Like, I don't want to throw a hitch here, but I mean, it was better than what they were. It's better than burning one in the dirt or taking another sack or whatever you're trying to do. Like that was, I don't know. I felt like the Eagles started squeezing on hitch routes better and stopped honored the vertical passing game less and less, because they knew the Chiefs weren't going to be able to hold up in protection. It kind of just felt like just started squeezing even a little bit more down over down. It's like the Chiefs proved how incapable they were of holding up in protection early in the game, that the Eagles just started, teeing off a little bit just with everything.
And like they definitely paid some attention to some of like the quick stuff after the first couple drives, but like they were still available at times. Like it doesn't have to be a hitch, it can just be a now route. Again, you throw it now. Yeah. We saw it in the second half. They hit Worthy one with a little smoke route. And what do? He breaks Quinyon Mitchell's tackle and picks up 9 yards. That's not going to happen every single time, but you're telling me that Hollywood Brown and Xavier Worthy aren't fast enough to pick up 2 to 5 yards, consistently when you are going to play off an 8 yards, especially when it's predictable, when they're going to rotate the weak safety down. That means that corner has to kind of bail off. It's not like you have a pretty good idea. Now, to the Eagles' credit, they mix it up enough, because I do think one time they wanted to throw a hitch to Hollywood Brown and he played cloud, and Hollywood Brown didn't change it to a go route. And I think Mahomes wanted him to, and he didn't. He just ran a hitch into the cloud corner, and that killed the play. And I think it led to a quick pressure or even a sack. So to the Eagles' credit, they mixed it up, but it's just traditional quick game. And RPO isn't a traditional quick game. We're talking, you want to spread it out and you just want to get the ball. You can run slants, you can run hitches, quick outs. Like it just has to be run the right way. The only time the Chiefs really tried a quick game was an RPO or speed outs from the slot. The problem is from the slot is that means you're throwing against Cooper DeJean, who is their best player on these underneath routes. So maybe do it with your boundary wide receivers a little bit more. And they never got to it, which is frustrating from a game planning perspective alone. But then it takes me to my next step. Like, come on, Andy. We got the flooding a third of the field with 4 routes. It's so old school at this point in time. The way defenses play now, that doesn't work. When you're going to go up against a team that's going to play heavy zone, especially with good, solid principles like the Eagles have, that's not going to work. Go back and watch and freeze frame a lot of these true passing downs. There will be 4 receivers on the same third of the field, and there's going to be 5 or 6 Eagles defenders there. How do you expect to find space in that scenario? Andy's not a guy that runs something play side and backside and, this is your zone read. This is your zone read over here. This is your man read over here. And you're reading it out that way. He kind of just likes to put things all onto one side of the field. Maybe there's a backside ISO route if you like the leverage or the matchup, but like he doesn't change things up in the way that it needs to from a going like just a general scheme perspective. And it's just, we've talked about it all year. Teams are taking it away right now. The flood concepts that the Chiefs just love to run, teams are taking it away. What game this year was Andy just flooding zones and it was dominating? Their best offensive performances were all against man coverage or the Bills game the week before, which is the one time they did take advantage of zone with a lot of quick game that they didn't run this week. But when is the game that his game plan of flooding zones took over this year? It didn't exist. Just time to change stuff. And if you're not going to change stuff, at least come up with a game plan that attacks what you're going up against. And he didn't give this offense or Patrick Mahomes good looks whatsoever. Mahomes played bad. Offense outside Worthy played bad, but he didn't give them any good answers. He didn't set them up for success going into this game whatsoever.
All right. Well, we're going to take a break and we'll be back to talk about the tackle situation right after this.
Happier times.
Maybe.
Shop Chiefs tickets and more with no fees. Plus, save big with code KCSN at ticketsforless.com, the official ticket provider of KC Sports Network.
Real quick, you guys don't have any overarching tackle takes that haven't been expressed already as far as hey, the tackle sucked, playing a guard sucked. I mean, we can all agree with that. Is there any other nuance to that you need to acknowledge before we move on at all?
Before we get into tackle play, can we talk about I just want to do the super chat. Before we go to tackles, can we do the super chat?
Sure.
Different here. This is from Anonymous Mango. So KC lost one of their safety coaches to the Baltimore Ravens. Then they hired a new linebackers coach and a senior defensive assistant coach who's previously on staff. So Matt House.
I was saying, do you know who it is? It's a Matter
Matt
Day.
House is coming back for the senior defensive assistant after, I guess he was with the Jags last year. That's not great. And then LSU, where he also wasn't great. But for the Chiefs, he looked really good. So Matt House is back as a senior defensive assistant. The Chiefs have also hired Jackson State's linebacker coach, Chris Orr. Or name sounds familiar. He did play for the Panthers for a season. He is Zach Orr's brother. One season, it looks like, of coaching. He also spent some time, I think, doing some stuff in like the front office for Wisconsin before going to play in the XFL or one of those other football leagues. But then finally, the Chiefs have lost Donald D'Alessio. Hopefully said that right. To the Ravens. Yep. He had been the safety coach the past couple of years. Chief safeties had, played pretty well. I'm not saying he is the one responsible for developing them, but we'll have to see how that impacts, Hicks or Cook, who are still trying to develop and are young players moving forward.
All right. Thank you, Maddie, for that, by the way.
Sure.
Thank you for the super chat as well. Okay. So in the days since this game has been over, right? There's been a lot of conversation on social media about the tackle position, which was the most glaring, obvious issue. It's an issue we talked about for the entirety of the season, and it's ultimately what kept this team from, being more competitive in the Super Bowl. I don't know if they would have won it. I just know that they would have been more competitive if the tackle situation had been resolved. But it's also kind of pivoted into this giant, complaint, and a lot of people are taking it to a level that it shouldn't be taken to, where, we are just hell-bent on, blaming the organization for failing at the left tackle position. And we are going to go up in arms about, the tackle position here and the Chiefs' inability to identify and find somebody to kind of bring some consistency to it. And to a degree, I understand why people are frustrated. I also don't think that we are appreciating the context of this, of two things. We're looking at this in a vacuum for the 2024 season. After this team has already won 2 Super Bowls, right? So This team is in pursuit of a three-peat, and they're having to figure things out to continue to push forward and be a contender in the National Football League for this, for the three-peat. And we're just we're trying to put this thing in this vacuum for 2024 and 2024 alone, and also not really coming up with the hindsight ideas on how to make this tackle situation better. So I've looked and done some digging into this over the last couple of years, right? Or just the last couple seasons of what could the Chiefs have really done differently at the tackle position over the last few years? They could have paid Orlando Brown when Orlando Brown became a free agent, and Orlando Brown was negotiating. His people were essentially negotiating in, I'll say it was bad faith negotiating, because they wound up getting 80% of what they were asking for from the Cincinnati Bengals and had to cold call all these teams in the National Football League on the day before free agency. So they botched that. The Orlando Brown people botched that thing entirely, and they wound up suffering financially because he only took 80% of what he was asking for. And then you go look at, so all right, so we've got that situation there, right? The Chiefs maybe could have paid Orlando Brown. And, opportunity cost lost. Drew Tranquill's not on the roster this year or something because they had to pay a tackle. I don't know. There might even been more domino effects from that too. So then we look at the 2023 draft. And if you go and look at the 2023 draft, I believe there's the Chiefs were trying to trade with the Dallas Cowboys, who picked at 26. At pick 27, Anton Harrison, the tackle from Oklahoma, is drafted. Okay, so maybe I'm of the belief they were trying to trade up for Anton Harrison. So maybe that's the move that they could have made. Instead, what do? They just go and win a Super Bowl with Donovan Smith instead. They basically did what they did last year, and they said, all right, we're going to roll with, we have 4 offensive linemen we feel good about. We're just going to go ahead and we're going to try to figure things out at the left tackle position. That's what they did in 2023. They won the Super Bowl doing it. Okay. All right. So instead, they still try to take a swing at tackle. They take the next tackle off the board in the third round because I don't know. Matthew Bergeron, Cody Mock, and Tyler Steen are all interior offensive linemen now in the National Football League. And they take Wanye Morris in the third round, the next tackle off the board. So they're giving themselves a viable swing at the tackle position. They try to play him out of position. They're basically saying, hey, we'll get a developmental tackle. Hopefully we can, get him to play capably, and we're going to try to play him on the left side. Okay, we look at next year or this last year, then 2024. Free agent market stinks. Tyron Smith, or maybe it's Tyron Smith, who missed games again this year and wasn't particularly good for the New York Jets. Like, I don't know how many opportunities they really missed in the free agent market. And then you go and look at this year's draft. There's you could say maybe instead of Xavier Worthy, they draft Tyler Guyton. Are the Chiefs better off having Tyler Guyton than they are Xavier Worthy? I don't think so. I know it might have shored up the offensive tackle group, but that guy's still going to need time to develop this year too. I just look at the hindsight and if you are looking in a vacuum, I get people frustrated. But when you are picking in the 30s consistently every single year, and you're having to make decisions to both go for it in the three-peat and try to develop and build the roster around, you're paying Chris Jones. There wasn't really a great tackle to pay last year anyway. I don't understand why people are up in arms because the Chiefs didn't three-peat.
Yeah.
Because they had a hard time trying to solve the tackle position.
And went 15-1.
And went 15-1, and they played the one team that could give them the most problems on the NFC side when it came to the offensive line. And this is what they said in 2024. It was last year. It was, we're going to roll with Donovan Smith, and we're going to just get capable tackle play, and then we're going to let all the other guys work, and we're going to give this guy help. This year it was, we're going to roll with Wanye Morris and Kingsley Suamataia, who's another second-round pick, by the way, another early pick, and we're going to hope that one of those guys can play at a capable enough level to what Donovan Smith did last season. It didn't work. And then, by the way, that doesn't work, and what do? They go and grab DJ Humphries midseason, a guy who was who's a Pro Bowler in the National Football League at the left tackle spot. He got hurt and kind of just hampered his ability to get back and play. So Joe Tooney's their fourth attempt at the tackle spot. It's really bothered me, the context that we've tried to use for this tackle conversation in a vacuum, because good tackles don't hit the market and good tackles don't get drafted outside the top 20 picks. And so it's just been very frustrating to see the context that people are trying to use for this tackle argument. Find a path, even just trying to find a hindsight path that makes sense. Oh, simply trade up for Anton Harrison. They tried. Teams are they can't get up there. Some people won't let them up there. So it's been very frustrating to see this conversation over the last couple of days, and I will defend how they've handled this because I don't think that there's been a ton of great options for them.
Yeah, it's hard to really get on Brett Veach when you look at what he's done, how he's been able to retool this roster in the face of everything. It is really, really hard to pay your quarterback and sustain greatness like this in this league. It is a really hard thing to do. And the way that he's managed to do it, and again, gotten creative. He got killed for trading Tyreek Hill when he traded him. Let's not rewrite history there. That was not a popular move. Everybody thought this was going to be the downfall of Mahomes, all of that. And it ended up leading to this dynasty, this near three-peat, becoming what it was. The way that he's drafted, I mean, we talked about that 2022 draft class a bunch. No GM is going to hit 100%. I think he has done a phenomenal job navigating this roster. As you said, good tackles do not grow on trees. He tried to get ahead of it. I mean, Jawan Taylor was not, has not been the best answer. Tried to get ahead of it there too. I guess I could say one thing, I don't know, there's probably more to this story than I know, but Donovan Smith was sitting back out there, seemed ready and willing to rejoin the Chiefs. Would that have been a better move than bringing in DJ Humphries, somebody who already knows the system, who has been solid for this team? Like, would that move have made a big enough difference? I don't know. That's the one thing I could point to potentially this year.
I will say, though, do you not find it at least mildly interesting that he didn't find his way onto any team's roster the entirety of the year?
Yeah, there's that. That's what I'm saying. I feel like there's more to that story.
Agreed.
But that's the one thing you can maybe bring up as a counter argument. But that's a great point. Yeah, he wasn't on anybody's roster, so who knows what else is going on there. But yeah, I'm with you, Ken. I can't go back and kill Veach for this when they had the season that they had. As you said, they ran into the perfect opponent to exploit the issues that they have, and it came back to bite. It happened.
The Lions weren't going to present that problem. They're going to present different problems, but they weren't going to present that problem. The Chiefs were going to be able to run functional offense against the Detroit Lions, and one team was able to really, just punish them.
I mean, I agree with the sentiment that overall there's not been like an offensive tackle choice that is available. I think looking back in hindsight now, you just you handle the Orlando Brown situation as annoying as it is, because you had a functional tackle in the building who was willing to come back. Yes, you had to pay him more than you wanted to. Yes, it had to take longer than you wanted to, and it pissed you off the year before how it went down. I get it, and I'm not saying they did a good job, and I'm not blaming the Chiefs entirely for that situation. But Orlando Brown Jr. was better for the Chiefs than Jawan Taylor's been for the Chiefs. He's better for the Chiefs than anybody that's played left tackle since. So maybe you fumbled that situation a little bit. You take partial blame, even if it's 49 to 51% from Orlando Brown's agent. It's just a little bit. It's like maybe in hindsight, you go back and you just say, hey, you know what? Quibbling over $2.5 million extra or $5 million maybe isn't worth it in the scenario in the long run. But whatever. That's fine. I understand how we got there. Going into this year, though, I still am a little shaky on going in with the Wanya Morris, Kingsley Suamatea combo at left tackle and nothing else. I think that's still a choice. And I'm not saying that I know what was available beforehand, but getting to the draft and essentially saying, hopefully we get somebody that's ready day one, because, Kent, we talked all offseason about it. We didn't think that they really wanted Wanya Morris to be their starting left tackle going into the year. So you come out with a second-round rookie left tackle as your only competition for him, that's bad. That's not good. There's no good process there. I get it. There might not have been an easy answer available, but there's no good process there to be had, whatever it is. There might be more to the Donovan Smith thing, but hey, at least make somebody come beat him out. DJ Humphries wasn't going to be healthy at the time, so he wasn't in that equation. I don't have the answer. It's just going in with those as your only two options for the left tackle going into the season is at least something that I think fans are allowed to say, I don't know. How did they get there? Because they hadn't seen Kingsley play up to that point besides at college. Did they think he was going to be ready to play an NFL season? Because if so, that's a big whiff on the evaluation of what he's going to be. They obviously didn't think Wanya Morris was, or they wouldn't have been giving it to somebody else and trying to find. So it's just like they didn't think they had left tackle figured out, but they still rolled into the season with it. That's a little bit of an indictment on the plan.
I think they
fair.
I think they wanted it was
wanted, yes.
I do think the plan was, hey, let's give these two young kids a chance to battle it out. Let's see one of them elevate themselves to be, capable. They don't need him to be a world beater. They needed to be capable, much like what they had with Donovan Smith. Donovan Smith was not a world beater. He was not some elite tackle. He was just functional. He was fine.
Better than playing a guard at tackle, though, which nobody else was this year.
Better than playing a guard at tackle. But the point remains, and if maybe in a different world, under different circumstances, Donovan Smith is back. But he didn't find a job the entirety of the season for a reason.
But my point is still, though, even if they wanted those two to battle it out, I think that you can be weary of that plan. You can talk bad about the plan to say one of these two young guys as a rookie or a second-year mid-round pick is supposed to be good enough. That in itself, for a left tackle in the NFL, that's not a high hit rate. That being the plan is probably not good, which leads me to my only issue with the tackle thing. I have quibbles with the Orlando Brown situation in hindsight with going into this year with those two as your guys. My real problem is they keep having to invest lower in tackles than they would want to based on where they draft, what the money they have available. We all agree with that. Maybe you don't ask your tackles to have the hardest tackle job in the NFL. Maybe we don't have our tackles vertical set every single play and create the most narrow pocket, and then also have to anchor from that spot because we're helping the B gap. If like you watch the Eagles, and I get it, they have much better tackles than the Chiefs. Go watch the Bills, better tackles than the Chiefs. Go even watch what the Texans try to do, who have one tackle better than the Chiefs. The right tackle's a little bit more up in the air, but like look at the pocket integrity that they try to set up. It's wider. They create more space. The Chiefs don't. Guys are dropping. It's a vertical set, all vertical sets. Maybe we don't have that second round rookie vertical set every single time. Maybe we don't have, a guard trying to play left tackle vertical set every time and create such a narrow space. It's just they ask their tackles to do such a difficult job, and then they give lower amounts of talent to it because of the situation they're in. That is something I think we can have a conversation about. And that's not Veach. That's, a little Veach, but also a little Andy Heck. Why do we have to do it this way? Why is this what has to be done all the time? Is it preference like for Jawan Taylor? I think it is for him because he doesn't do anything but vertical set. At least other guys mix it up. So it's just, that's my issue. Why do they have to have the hardest tackle job in the NFL if I'm filling it up with mid-round draft picks and guys off the scrap heap at left tackle?
Any thoughts, Hamilton?
Yeah. No, that's well said. That's definitely something that I think they're going to have to address because that was an issue all year. Those vertical sets got them, created a number of issues throughout the year. There wasn't a lot of help given there. You're putting your guys in a really difficult position. But yeah, it's definitely something. I think that fixing that tackle situation has to be priority number one this offseason. I think we can all agree there. You're right, Ken. I think at this point it's hard to go back and nitpick everything in hindsight with all the other things that had to be done on this roster. And again, yes, it's a critical spot on this roster. But again, 15-1, back in the Super Bowl with a chance to three-peat. It's hard for me to just kill Brett Veach and kill this organization when that's the case. I know it's disappointing. I know it's frustrating. I know you want it to be fixed. And I know, especially when you have Patrick Mahomes, and that's the one thing that can sink him is when your offensive line is a disaster. It's awful. I'm not completely excusing it, but we also have to put it in perspective here as well.
And I think we also all acknowledge that the plan was a stretch, that to try to get, to try to develop, somebody to play over on the left side. Like that was a stretch, but like you have to make those choices as you were going through trying to build this thing out because again, there wasn't free agent options at their disposal and they had to fix the wide receiver position because the wide receiver position was the biggest issue with this team heading into the season. And so it's like, how do you navigate all this stuff? If you would rather have Tyler Guyton instead of Xavier Worthy, which I wouldn't, there's your answer. Like, that's it.
Yeah.
I don't know, man. And I guess who knows what Tyler Guyton looks like in his first year? He didn't look particularly great for the Cowboys this year. So what do we do? I don't know, man.
Yeah.
That's just where I don't know what kind of great options that they had at it's tough to do what they're trying to do and build what they're trying to build. And I'll make fun of the Bengals again. By the way, Orlando Brown Jr.'s APY was $16 million over the course of that contract. And he was hoping to be, literally, he got 80% of what he was hoping for. He wanted a 2 to start for his APY on the contract that he was getting. And literally no one wanted him for that. And so he played himself and he screwed the Chiefs. He screwed the Chiefs and all they did was win a Super Bowl right afterwards. But and then he had to go play in Cincinnati. But the one thing, and you made a great point too, though, Hamilton, earlier, and just one more piece of this, right? There has not been a dip for this team to take advantage of when it comes to a season where they're picking at 20 or 25 even. Now, the one year that they had a pick in the 20s turned out pretty good because it was Trent McDuffie. But, I don't know. This team, there hasn't been a dip for them to take advantage and get an opportunity, right? And so they've been kind of scrambling since that Bucs Super Bowl when they lost, or that season when they lost Eric Fisher, and that kind of ended Eric Fisher's career for all intents and purposes. And then it's just kind of been a scramble. They had to pay nearly the value of a first-round pick for Orlando Brown Jr. that season too. like they gave up pick 38 or something, like the value of pick 38 to get serviceable left tackle play. And that's what it takes to kind of get that. And so it's tough, man. It's a tough spot to be in. And I don't know how many great options that they really had in hindsight. That doesn't mean that they don't have to fix the position now. And the good news is, guys, that the free agent class is not good at the tackle position yet again. Shocker. It's almost like teams pay tackles when they're capable. You've seen, we can talk about some of the names. You see some of the names out there. What do you do if you're the Chiefs? Like, you know that this was a glaring issue on your roster. Hamilton, what are you trying to do? Are you trying to find somebody to pay long term? Are you trying to find a stopgap? Are you drafting again? Like what are you trying to do at the left tackle position?
It's hard. I mean, ideally, the ideal solution is you hope you can find somebody in the draft, because especially with the situation with this roster right now, the cap situation with their own free agents, it's going to be hard. It's going to be hard to pay a tackle that you view as a long-term solution there, right? Like, you look at the names of like a Cam Robinson could be a nice stopgap. I don't know how much he's going to command on the open market. Ronnie Stanley is going to be available. Those are the two names that you look at that are probably going to be your best options, right? Unless I'm missing somebody.
Those are probably the two of the bigger names out there, I would say. I think you got two of the bigger ones, yeah.
Yeah, and again, I mean,
Jedrick
Trey
Wills.
Smith. I think we all like it, it's going to be tough to keep Trey Smith around as it is. We'll see with that, but that's going to create another issue that's going to have to be addressed. It's going to be hard through free agency. I think the ideal solution is going to be through the draft, but as we've talked about, you're not getting a premium pick. I will be honest right now. Like, I have not. Next week is my week where I really start to dig in on prospects and into the draft. So I know you guys, that's your guys' area of expertise. I don't know what the tackle crop looks like in this draft, but it is slim pickings in free agency. And, again, especially given the Chiefs cap situation right now and the situation with their own free agents, the draft is probably going to have to be the solution here.
Yeah. As far as like free agents, I know a lot of people wanted Alaric Jackson, played left tackle for the Rams the past 2 years. He started the last 2 years. This year, he had to put it together a pretty good year. He also has like 32.5-inch arms. And like, there's just no way the Andes are going for that. And I had to go and like fully watch him to tell you if I even think it would work. I get a little, remembering him at Iowa, I get a little concerned if I'm going to slap him out like we talked about, just doing a bunch of vert sets over and over again at left tackle for the Chiefs. That doesn't seem like that's his game. And so if you want to change up your pass protection scheme and maybe see if you can make that work, he's another name to put in the mix, but he's not a guy that his play style or his physical stature really fits with what the Chiefs normally like. So like, that's where it also gets limiting. They want guys with 34+ inch arms that are relatively big bodied, that also have the athleticism to vertical set to get depth, because Mahomes requires depth, but then also you can't have your chest run through like Taylor and Tooney did as like a combination. So it's a hard position to find. I'm at the point where if I'm the Chiefs and I'm sitting there and I'm staring down this barrel and I have the money to make it work, I think I'm just going to go win that sweepstake for Ronnie Stanley. And I know the injury history is scary.
Yeah.
This is the first year he's played a full season. Earlier in his career, he was just missing a couple games every single year. It was every single year, and it was a couple games, but like, it happened. Then he went through like a 3-year stretch where he was recovering and injured and recovering and injured. He finally came back this year, played a full season, was very good. I think you might just have to go win that sweepstake because it's a bad tackle class. I don't know who you're going to be able to up for and get in this draft that's going to not only be able to come in and play day one, but that's also going to be good enough to do all the things that we've been talking about. So your back might be up against the wall here. You might quite literally just have to go win a bidding war for a guy that's an injury risk. And like, that's not a good spot to be in, but what's the other solution? I don't even know if there's guys out there that give you just good enough tackle play that are available. So I don't think Jedrick Wills is that just good enough tackle play. I don't think he's very good. So like, you're just left with a lot of nothing and trying to fix an issue.
And like, the Jedrick Wills idea, like, that's maybe you trying to sign him. Like, I could see the Chiefs trying to sign Jedrick Wills. Like, if they're going to try to solidify it for a few years,
It's such a Chiefs move.
It is the most Chiefs move to
I
draft a
hate
former first round pick. If the Chiefs had a good grade on Jedrick Wills as a first round pick, a couple years ago, and he's got long enough arms. He's played the position. They think that they can get more out of him. They can pay him. Like I wouldn't. It is a very Chiefs move. But this free agent. They're stuck in the same spot that they've been. And like I think for a while until they can finally find someone that they can develop, like I think there's a chance that they are in, because Ronnie Stanley's sweepstakes might still be a 1-year deal. It could still be a short-term contract. I'm fascinated to see what Ronnie Stanley's deal looks like. There's not a ton of great options. Joseph.
All right, well, we gotta take this. We gotta take this right now. Hold on, we gotta take this from, because there's a big one. Thank one Dub Freak Freer. Thank you for the super chat. We appreciate it. Living in a wonderland, but is it a possibility of getting out to protect Mahomes in the blinds for the next 10 years? Why wouldn't you use future picks trade up to the top? Okay, top 10. Kid's better at draft math off his head than I am. Top 10's too far for the Chiefs to get to with pick 31, right? Like you're probably looking more at most, even using future picks, 15 to 20 range at absolute most using future picks.
Can I jump in? Because I've been very hot about this argument too for the entirety of the day, and I actually posted a couple of things today about this. All right, so everyone on Twitter today was just like, it's simple, just trade up in the draft. Okay, so you need 2 teams to trade up in the NFL draft. You have to have a dance partner. There are teams that are actively not wanting to trade and participate with the Kansas City Chiefs via trade. Also, you have to, if you are really trying to get all the way up there for a tackle, you are having to ask a team to jump 20 spots in the draft in the first round in order to make this work. So even if the draft math from a compensation perspective makes sense, there's not a ton of teams willing to go from 12 to 32. And so, yeah, like the Chiefs are 31. The Chiefs' top 3 picks this next year could get them to 12. I'm not sure there's a tackle worth doing that for this year. Josh Simmons, if the medical's clear, like that's, that's it. Like Will Campbell, Kelvin Banks might be guards because of arm length, or Mount Membao might be a guard because of arm length. Josh, like maybe last year, if they had the extra, Titans pick, that's basically the value of a late 2. Maybe if they had that draft capital, they could have been more aggressive last season. I don't know. But it's just it's very difficult to get, first off, find a team willing to trade with the Chiefs, period. Second off, use all of your draft capital to go up to a team that might be interested. And also, they have to be interested in jumping 15, 20 spots in the draft and willing to take, delayed gratification, pick at pick 32. Like that just does not happen very often. So,
and especially now, when if the Chiefs are going to make that big of a move, everyone knows what it's for. And not... At least half the teams in the NFL don't want the Chiefs to get better because they play in the AFC. And that's still going to be an issue. So you're having, not only are you going to have to deal with that issue, but what team picking, 12 is going to be like, Josh Simmons is available and the Chiefs are calling us to trade up. I sure wonder who they want. You know what I mean? Stuff like that. Oh, look at you, Kent.
Yeah.
Yeah,
if only the Bills were picking up there again.
I know. Come on, get up there, Buffalo. No, what I do think is interesting to me is the whole tackle thing and the value and not being able to get guys. It reminds me a lot of the cornerback talk a few years back where we're like, hey, Brett Veach hates corners. He doesn't pay him. He doesn't draft them early. They just don't do it. They don't like them. They just want a bunch of day 3 guys. And then Brett Veach right before the draft is like, listen, I don't hate good corners. We're just drafting at the end of round 1. It's really hard to get good corners there. And we're like, nah, that's lip service. Then they go up and trade up and draft Trent McDuffie in that very draft. And well, that worked out. They had extra draft capital, more than they even do now with the Tyreek Hill trade. So I'm not saying it's 1 for 1 and that they're going to do that. It's just the conversation about tackle going on right now reminds me a lot of that. And that everybody wants the Chiefs to invest more in tackle and they just haven't done it for reason X, Y, or Z. It's all hypothetical right now. But when push came to shove, they did finally find the solution to that in the upcoming draft. So hey, here's to hoping that they somehow figure it out here.
Can I add one more thing? Because I am very fired up about this. And if
this is your topic, buddy.
A little bit. Do you know what tackle, the only tackle that really they could have got if they gave up their first, second, and third round picks last year, which was, by the way, their 3 highest picks last year were their first, second, and third round picks last year? Do you know the highest tackle that they would have been able to select? Any guesses?
Mims or Pittsburgh, Washington it's a tackle that got hurt.
Fatanu.
Yeah.
It was Mims. So they could have got Mims. So yeah, I know.
Good player, but
good player. Also did the thing he does that every year and miss time. I'm just saying, like, they would have had to give up their whole draft to have Amarius Mims and not have Xavier Worthy.
Sure.
Yeah.
And so
it's difficult.
It's difficult. I know someone on Twitter is like, hey, why don't you just trade everything you have for alt? Like, the Chargers aren't trading from 5 to 32 no matter how much you give them.
No.
That's not happening, especially in a good draft. It's like, that's just not happening.
And that was like the worst kept secret. I feel it was how badly they wanted Joe Alton to transform their offensive line. And,
Okay. Hold on. The Chiefs were interested in Trent Williams when he was hitting free agency, right?
Yeah.
A few years back. They were going to pay him everything.
Yeah.
And it's kind of crazy right now. What do we think the Texans are fed up with Laremy Tunsil after a year where he had a bunch of penalties, didn't play his best game, didn't play his best ball? Their offensive line's terrible. So, like, trading away their one good offensive line would be crazy. But do they happen to be fed up with him? What would he need in a trade like from? It's like, I know last year wasn't great for him. I'm saying there's the reason they might be ready to move on is because of the not so great parts of his game. But like, I don't know. I just think that's like the one guy that's like really good that maybe would have been available. I don't know what his contract looks like. I know they just paid him a lot of money.
If they traded him, they could save. It'd be 15 dead and 14 million saved on the cap, and they're currently under the cap for 2025.
They would just want to have him out of the building, right? That's all I'm saying. It's like if they really wanted him out of the building because they got fed up with him, he's a guy that we know the Chiefs, at least at left tackle, if a player's really good, they're willing to go to an older player. Yep. Again, they tried to go after Trent Williams. Laremy Tunsil, up until last year, 2 years ago, he was one of, if not the best pass protecting left tackle in the NFL for a couple years in a row.
Yeah.
Last year, it fell apart a little bit. Maybe Bobby Sloak's to blame. Maybe their offensive line, who had even bigger problems than the Chiefs did, like just trying to figure things out, was the issue and not him. I don't know. He's just like the one name that like maybe is could be potentially available for trade. That's all.
It was not. It was a little over a year ago that he dominated Myles Garrett in a playoff game. We're not that far removed. And you're right. The issues on the rest of that offensive line could have as much to do with it as anything else. I mean, that would, if that is a scenario that presents itself, I think that's a no-brainer. You have to try to take a swing. But again, also the Texans are another team. Do they want to help the Chiefs get better? Probably not.
Probably
that's going to be another issue you run into there.
Yeah. And again, like I don't know. It doesn't look like there's a ton of tackle options available. Potentially, like, does Jake Matthews get cut from the Falcons? I mean,
who's even and teams are so weird in the NFL anymore. It's like I don't feel like teams are like not many teams are trying to like straight up rebuild. You know what I mean? Like, not a lot of teams are trying to just mortgage off a good offensive lineman so that they can get more draft picks and like identifying them. And then, like we're talking about, if you're the Chiefs, it probably has to be an NFC team more likely than an AFC team. Just it gets tricky to find a tackle, whether it's in the draft, in free agency, or even trying to trade for one. So that's why the Chiefs haven't found the easy button for it yet.
And I think they'll continue to turn over every single rock to try to figure this left tackle
play a rock. It might go better.
Yeah, they should. That might work.
But the rock.
They're gonna keep doing what they're doing to try to identify. I don't know if you can bull rush the Brahma Bull. Is all I'm saying. So maybe the Rock. I mean, his name's literally the Rock.
Bring me The Rock and Vin Diesel, because neither one of them can lose when they're on set together. So, like, we're just set. In the contract, not allowed to lose.
Does Dwayne The Rock Johnson want to come play left tackle for the Chiefs? I'm just saying. There's been worse ideas. Maybe playing a guard at tackle or Mike Caliendo. I think we're gonna get out of here on that.
Oh wow! Look at this whole tab that you made Tucker make and put on here, and you're just gonna ignore it, huh?
I think it kind of bled into everything. So that is gonna do it for this episode of the KC Laboratory. Thank you all so much for listening, watching, subscribing. We love you. We appreciate you. We'll catch you later.
He saw Craig wasn't here, so he said, "No chance we go over 60."
That's right.